My first assignment as a priest was at St. Turribius Parish in Chicago, which was a great parish, and we had a large youth group there, definitely over 40 kids. And I remember one night when the youth group gathered, it was right before Good Shepherd Sunday, and we decided to do a little experiment with the kids relating to today's gospel and the whole theme about the Good Shepherd. And so what we did was we blindfolded one of the girls in the youth group and had her walk into the greater group and have random people speak to her to see what voices she would be able to recognize and what voices she would not. And when we were done with our little experiment, we asked the girl, "Whose voices did you recognize?" She said, "My friends." And then we asked her, "Why did you only recognize your friends?" And her response was, "Because I have a relationship with them." Now, she knew everyone in the group, but she only had a relationship with very few, a friendship with very few, and those were the only voices that she was able to recognize. In our first reading from Acts today, Paul and Barnabas are in the midst of their mission in the cities of Antioch and Pisidia, and we hear, many Jews and worshipers followed Paul and Barnabas, who spoke to them and urged them to be faithful to the grace of God. In other words, Paul and Barnabas were encouraging and urging the people to keep listening, to keep responding, to continue following Christ, to hear his word, and to remain, above all, in relationship with him. We hear that, ironically, the ones who responded most to God's grace in the midst of the mission were the Gentiles. And these were the ones who were the pagans, who had no religious background, and who had no idea who Jesus was. It's almost like they were a blank slate, which worked in their favor as they were able to truly hear and listen. On the other hand, the ones who rejected Paul and Barnabas and the message of Jesus were the Jewish leaders and the establishment. And sadly, these were the ones who had all the knowledge in the world. They knew the scriptures. They had knowledge about the prophecies that spoke about Jesus. They were highly educated. They knew who Jesus was. And yet they refused to hear and listen. Knowledge without relationship. In our gospel today, we hear the Lord Jesus talking about the utter importance of hearing and listening. He says, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me." In other words, as the girl said in the youth group, there must be a relationship. And so, like the kids in the youth group, we can know people, we can know a lot about them, and still not be able to recognize their voice. My brothers and sisters, it is no different in terms of our faith and in terms of how we relate to Jesus. We could know a lot about him. We could be raised Catholic. We could have even gone to Catholic school or Catholic university. We could have jumped through many hoops and know a lot about Jesus and maybe a few quotes without being able to hear his voice, without having a relationship, a friendship with Jesus. And so today's Liturgy of the Word invites us to fulfill our knowledge about Christ, to continue to fulfill that knowledge by continuing to pray. For prayer is the number one most important thing that we are called to do as believers. It's the one absolute non-negotiable. There are many worship styles, there are many liturgy styles, and those things are interchangeable. But prayer and relationship with God is non-negotiable. And prayer, most simply put, is hearing God, listening to God, speaking to God, and learning how to recognize his voice. And this is utterly important because only our relationship with Christ can transform our hearts, can fill us with joy, peace, and hope, and make us, like Paul and Barnabas, missionaries in the world today. Only our relationship with God can help us to hear his voice in real time. To hear his voice in real time. To hear his voice in the person right next to us. To hear his voice in daily life. To hear his voice in the people who are suffering, the people who are alone, the people who are marginalized. To be able to hear and listen and to respond as believers in real time. To hear his voice when we have a big decision to make in life, right? We call this discernment. This is a voice we don't want to lose when we're making a critical, life-changing decision for our family or for ourselves. And it's so easy to lose that voice in this world because there's so many voices all screaming at us from different directions, telling us what to do, how to be, what is right, what is true, what is not true. We must listen and we must hear. And so may today's Eucharist help us to remain faithful to the grace of God through our relationship with Jesus and with our brothers and sisters.